everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today's video is going to be an interview that was done by NBC News. It was an exclusive interview with the Epstein survivors and their families, and the interview was done by Hallie Jackson. So if you're all about those raw, honest reactions, you found the right place. I'm Indigo Moon, and here we dive into everything from the latest reaction videos and social commentary to breaking news events and so much more. You never know what's coming next. Just know it's going to be real, fun, and full of surprises. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this type of content.
Speak today not only in service of my own recovery from trauma inflicted by Maxwell and Epstein, but to honor the lives, the courage, and sacrifices of Virginia Giuffre, Caroline Andriano, and others who could not continue. Their voices mattered. Their stories must not be forgotten. Accountability is what makes a society civilized. Equal opportunity and equal consequence for all. Consequences are not about punishment alone. They exist to deter future harm, to protect vulnerable, and to set a standard of justice. If Ghislaine Maxwell were pardoned, it would undermine all the sacrifices I made to testify and make mockery of mine and all survivors' suffering. That is why the Epstein Files Transparency Act is so essential. It requires the Department of Justice release all the records related to Epstein and Maxwell investigations, flight logs, immunity deals, internal communications, and even the records surrounding Epstein's detention and death. And crucially, it forbids withholding documents simply because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. This is about ending secrecy wherever abuse of power takes root. But transparency alone is not enough. Survivors need protection, resources, and legal support. If this Congress is serious about justice, then let this moment also affirm your commitment to provide victims with the legal aid they need to confront abusers, to navigate complex systems, and to reclaim their power. Transparency must be matched by support, or else too many victims will remain silent out of fear and lack of access.
I want to take a moment to appreciate all these women for continuing to come forward and share their stories. It is incredibly brave for them to do so. I know as a survivor myself, and I've done some activism work in the past, working with survivors of SA and R-word, that it is very difficult to have to put yourself out there like that, especially on TV in front of millions, maybe even tens of millions of people watching. For them to continue doing that, it's just so incredibly brave. Also, it is sad that these women never got their full closure, their full justice. And I believe that they, more than anyone, deserve to see those files. They were the ones in the files.
The statistics demand action. Nearly 1 in 5 women in America will experience rape or attempted rape in her lifetime. Every 74 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that person is a child. These are not numbers, they are people. They are your daughters, your sons, your constituents, your friends. Statistically, 1 in 5 of your families will face this nightmare. The days of sweeping this under the rug are over. We, the survivors, say no more. I want to help create a world where survivors of sexual abuse and abuse of power can come forward safely. And I ask Congress to join me in that effort, not only by passing this bill, but by ensuring that those who step forward have legal support to face their abusers and see justice done. When Judge Berman gave Epstein survivors the chance to finally speak, the world listened. After so many years, survivors were heard. That moment was historic, and so is this moment. For me, the turning point was when I had my daughter, and on the day she was born, I knew I had a responsibility to protect her and to protect all children. I have to use my voice, the voice that had been silenced by fear and shame for so many years. Make no mistake, my polished exterior is a shield hiding a wound that still bleeds. But through this wound, I have found purpose. To be part of lasting change in how we confront exploitation and abuse. And to be clear, the only motive for opposing this bill would be to conceal wrongdoing. You have a choice. Stand with the truth, or with the lies that have protected predators for decades. I am no longer weak. I am no longer powerless. And I'm no longer...
And I'm not sure about the other women that were involved that also passed away, the circumstances of their passing, but Virginia's story it's an incredible story of a woman that tried very hard to overcome the brutality that she went through in that Epstein time period and everything that she had to suffer even after that. And despite that, she did so much charitable work, especially helping people that are survivors of abuse. So for her to go out the way she did, it's a tragedy, absolute tragedy. An example of how this type of abuse lives with you forever. Despite this woman trying her best to continue on with her life and do something good with the horrible thing that she had to experience, it was just too much to bear. And then her brother coming, I think also is a great example of how it wasn't just these women that suffered, their families suffered too, because a part of them died when they went through this type of abuse, and their family had to see that and was helpless. That's incredibly terrible feeling. I couldn't imagine for Virginia's brother how awful that must be, that he knew that this man was abusing his sisters and there was nothing he could do about it. And another example of how the system just completely failed. Even the police in Miami tried so hard. They brought all their evidence together, and when the federal government stepped in, they did nothing but protect this man and allowed him to abuse thousands of more girls and young women. So it is absolutely disgusting. The whole cover-up, just the whole thing in general is absolutely terrible. But I have a lot of respect for her brother coming on here and standing in solidarity with these women. I'm sure that's what his sister would want. So that's very beautiful that he did that in her honor.
We're alone. And with your vote, neither will the next generation be. President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Annie Farmer, and I was 16 years old when I was flown to New Mexico to spend a weekend with Epstein and Maxwell. That same year, 1996, my sister, Maria Farmer, reported what happened to me there, along with reporting her own assault at their hands and their theft of sensitive photos of herself, of me, and our younger sister that she had taken for her work as a figurative painter. I am now 46 years old. 30 years later, we still do not know why that report wasn't properly investigated, or why Epstein and his associates were allowed to harm hundreds, if not thousands, of other girls and young women. We have never been told whether those images were found when they discovered a large amount of child sexual abuse material on his property. As a psychologist, I understand that when the system's meant to protect us, recreate the abuse cycle, the betrayal that occurs can be just as damaging as the original trauma. This happens when survivors of these crimes are not believed, when our well-being is not weighed as heavily as those who have more resources or more privilege, and when perpetrators of these crimes are given a platform rather than the survivors of them. For so many years, it felt like Epstein's criminal behavior was an open secret. Not only did many others participate in the abuse, it is clear that many were aware of his interest in girls and very young women and chose to look the other way because it benefited them to do so. They wanted access to his circle and his money. Their choice to align with his power left those of us who had been harmed by this man and his associates feeling very isolated. I could never have imagined being here today and this chorus of support that we have all received. I have been sent so many notes and messages from people with no direct connection to this case who've expressed their solidarity with us. And I believe that is because, in part, as Anushka explained so well, this is an extremely widespread issue of child sexual abuse, of sexual exploitation, of sexual violence. This affects almost every family in some way. From my conversations with women in these last few days and from all of the support that we've received, it's very clear to me that we are not going away, we are not going to be quiet, and we are not going to give up. And I ask the American public to stand with us and not give up. At a time with record high levels of distrust in our institutions and a perception that there are two Americas, one for those with power and privilege and one for everyone else, passing this Epstein transparency bill is one important step that can be taken to prove to Americans that the government does not side with sexual perpetrators. A thorough public review of this information is an important step in preventing the type of systemic failures that have occurred in this case and harmed all of us. An important step towards healing for those involved. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for being here today on this very powerful and special day for all of us here. My name is Marina Lacerda. I was minor victim 1 in federal indictment of Jeffrey Epstein in New York in 2019. I was one of dozens of girls that I personally know who were forced into Jeffrey's mansion on 9 East 71 Street in New York City when we were just kids. Today is the first time that I ever speak publicly about what happened to me. I never thought that I would find myself here. The only reason that I am here is because it feels like the people who matter in this country finally care about what we have to say. As an immigrant from Brazil, I feel empowered knowing that the little girl struggling to get by at 14 and 15 years old finally has a voice. For the first time, I feel like I matter as an American. I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey. It was the summer of high school. I was working 3 jobs to try to support my mom and my sister when a friend of mine in the neighborhood told me that I could make $300 to give an older guy a massage. It went from a dream job to the worst nightmare. Jeffrey assistant Leslie Groff would call me and tell me that I needed to be at the house so often that I ended up dropping out of high school before 9th grade. And I never went back. From 14 to 17 years old, I went and worked for Jeffrey instead of receiving an education. Every day I hoped that he would offer me a real job as one of his assistants or something important. I would finally have made it big, as, like we say, the American dream. That day never came. I had no way out. I was, until he finally told me that I was too old. There are many pieces of my story that I can't remember, no matter how hard I try. The constant state of wonder causes me so much fear and so much confusion. My therapist says that my brain is just trying to protect itself, but it's so hard to begin to heal knowing that there are people out there who know more about my abuse than I do. The worst part is that the government is still in possession right now of the documents and information about that could help me remember and get over all of this maybe and help me heal. They have documents with my name on them that were confiscated from Jeffrey Epstein's house and could help me put the pieces of my own life back together. But I don't have any of it.
I want to take a second to commend Wendy for coming out and sharing her story. For the first time, it's incredibly difficult to have to relive your trauma over and over and over again, and then to have to do it so publicly. It's incredibly brave for her. But I want to hit on some points that Wendy made. It was so heartbreaking when she said that it was just normal part of high school that these girls were offered to give these quote-unquote massages to rich older men. I was in high school in that time in Miami as well. I did know some girls that were propositioned for different things. Maybe they were just more upfront with the girls that I knew of what they were looking for. But still, these were young girls between 14 and 17. They had no business hanging out with these older men and what they were proposing that these girls would do for money. So I'm not too surprised by the act of that going on in Miami Beach as well, growing up very close in Miami to Miami Beach. The fact that it was normalized, that's the problem. Like even in my high school, like hearing about those few girls who admitted to taking those type of offers, that wasn't anything cool. They definitely weren't going around recruiting more girls. And people looked at them a certain type of way for doing those things. But for her to say that that was just normal, that's just scary to think about. Like how many other high schools in the Miami Beach area was he having scouts or recruiters as he called them and just abusing all these young girls? It's just terrifying to think about. Wendy also made a good point that even though Jeffrey is gone, that doesn't mean that this issue has gone away. Clearly, the way the government handled the situation was as if they didn't even care that there was this huge child ring going on. And just because this one bad guy is gone doesn't mean that this isn't still happening. We know this is a problem. We know it's even an international problem. So she's right that we need to keep speaking up and acknowledging that these crimes are happening. And I really feel for them for having to just keep reliving this trauma. Like they can't get any peace. The crimes that happened to some of these women were over 20 years ago, and they still have to keep coming forward and talking and talking and talking about it because our government won't hold them accountable. And unfortunately, our society has shifted a bit because of the Me Too backlash that it is difficult for them to come forward because there is a culture of people that don't believe them or believe that they are exaggerating what happened to them. There's even people that think that because they were high school girls that they very well knew what they were doing, and so this man shouldn't have been punished for it. I mean, there's just awful opinions out there. Of course, many of that stems from ignorance and hatred, especially hatred towards women. It is hard to have to come out and say that so publicly, especially in such a shaky time right now in our society. I think people are still trying to figure out where morality they want to stand on. But I think this is the right side of the aisle to stand on. These women have more than proved their cases. There were thousands of them who said the same thing. I mean, this isn't some hoax. There's no way you would gather this many girls going into 2 decades.
And I know the same is true for many of these women. We are here to support this bill today, not only for transparency, but for the American people. But if the government is going to release these documents to the public, describing the crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein and others, the least that they can do is give me my documents that they have about me. The other survivors deserve the same respect from our government. While identifying information must be redacted to the public, it is equally important to provide the victims themselves with unredacted information. I will never forget when the FBI agent showed up in my door in 2008. Jeffrey Epstein hired a lawyer to represent me, or more like to represent him, I like to say. I couldn't ask any questions, and I had no idea what was going on. I was terrified. Until today, I think most of us are still terrified. I thought somebody was going to kill me. I thought something was going to happen to my sister or my mother. It went further out to even maybe thinking something would happen in Brazil with my family. And then one day, the lawyer said that everything was just gonna go away. Like nothing happened. I didn't need to testify. When I asked him why, he gave no explanation. That was it. So why? Why was I never called to testify then? We could have saved so many women. We could have saved so many lives from being abused. Why did he get away with it in 2008? Why was he able to go on in the abuse with hundreds of girls after the Florida investigation? Why didn't they let me testify to help stop him? Our government could have saved so many women, but Jeffrey Epstein was too important and those women didn't matter. Why? Well, we matter now. We are here today and we are speaking and we are not going to stop speaking. Today, I stand here with the women who have really helped me to find the strength to come out and come forward to share my story for the very first time. Together, we are stronger than ever. While she may not be with us, Virginia Roberts, we will continue to use our voices to strengthen yours always. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Courtney Weil.
That is really sad that they haven't heard from anyone in the government pertaining to their case. I'm not surprised by that, especially with how things have turned out with the government and their new stance on the Epstein case in general. It is sad because that was a talking point for President Trump, and now to just completely go back on it like a whole 180, like that's so crazy to me. What she was saying about Ghislaine, I do have the full audio of that interview that she did with the Department of Justice, and I've separated into 4 different parts the 2 days. So do check out that video, it's on the channel. I didn't even consider it too much until she said this. It does feel like this woman is trying to change the narrative, and that is very dangerous. I have seen too much, especially in the last 5 years, of how easy people forget how things actually happen because a handful of powerful people told them to think otherwise. It's like if certain people said that the sky was red, these people would believe that, and that's terrifying. And I agree, people should not forget the amount of involvement Ghislaine had in all of this. She wasn't just like some girlfriend who didn't know anything, or it was kind of happening but she wasn't really sure if it, whatever her case is. I mean, she's taking the full, I had no idea anything was happening, right? That was not the case. I had watched the Netflix documentary and how much involvement this woman had in recruiting, and she was an actual recruiter, not these young girls that were 13, 14 years old. This woman was a recruiter. He sent her all over the world to acquire him, young girls and young women. I agree, it is very dangerous to have given her the platform, but I do understand why the government did it. She said she had something to say, and of course, the woman that was closest to him, you would think would have very good information, right? I understand why they even entertained it. If anything is gonna come from it, like a presidential pardon, she's crazy. That is not gonna happen. She didn't give them anything. I listened to the whole 5 hours of that audio. She said basically nothing. She just went on a long drawn biography of her life and then just kept pleading her innocence, and of course like blowing up smoke up President Trump's ass and ex-President Clinton's ass, and nothing that would even entitle her to a pardon. So really it was the government's waste of time, but I understand why they did it. And I do agree though, giving her any more of a platform would be dangerous.
Wild. I just wanted to take a second and just have a moment of silence for all the women survivors that aren't here with us today, that passed away due to anxiety, depression, trying to keep up with this case. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. My name is Courtney Wild. I was only 14 years old when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by a 13-year-old friend of mine. The details of the abuse that he inflicted on me for years is not important today. In 2028, I was cooperating with the federal government in the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. They sent me a letter telling me to be patient because this was going to be a lengthy investigation, but at the same time, they refused to talk to me and tell me what was going on. So I hired an attorney, Brad Edwards, because I was hopeful to get some answers. When I walked into his office at 19 years old, Brad sued the government for refusing to tell me what was going on under the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The only reason anyone ever found out that the government had already given Jeffrey Epstein immunity through the non-prosecution agreement was because our lawsuit forced the government to tell us. Otherwise, nobody would even know that today. Sometimes it's hard to believe that I had to sue the United States just to learn that my abuser was given immunity. I started as Jane Doe, but I decided I was proud enough to take on our country, and I was on the right side of history. We fought the government for 10 years to prove that the government violated our rights as crime victims and the crime victims' rights in order to protect a pedophile. We had to win the 11th Circuit Court Appeals to force the government to turn over thousands of pages of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and the government. Those emails provided the proof that the government worked very hard with Jeffrey Epstein to violate our rights. Why? Why did the government work so hard to protect Jeffrey and not so hard to protect me?
Wow, I mean, that was a powerful statement to make, that they are gonna come together and compile their list and then seek out their own justice. If I were these women, I would be absolutely terrified. The fact that she said that now twice on TV so boldly, wow, that's incredible. I mean, I would literally be scared for my life. So I commend these women for being so brave to even speak that they would do something like that. I guess in time we'll see if anything comes of it, but for sure, especially her, if she goes missing, I mean...
And my other innocent friends. Why was Jeffrey so important to the government, and why was I so insignificant? Why did nobody but our lawyers care before now? It seems people have only started to care because of Twitter and politics. But I would like to say this has nothing to do with politics. This is not a blue thing or a red thing. This is an everyone thing. We can all agree on this. The injustice that has happened here, multiple, over and over. Everybody that talks about this just seems to make it worse. We need transparency. It's time for us to see beyond the curtain. Why was Jeffrey Epstein so protected? Who is still being protected? And who protected them all, so the world can understand how Jeffrey was able to abuse so many of us for so long. I was lucky to have Brad Edwards, Brittany Henderson, and Paul Cassell take on my case pro bono and fight fearlessly over 20 years' time. I would like to thank them, and I'd also like to ask the Trump administration to please sign off on the Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act, the Courtney Wild Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act that's we're trying to get passed here so we can close the loopholes in the CVRA case that Epstein's attorney used to their benefit to get away with this. Thank you so much.
Good morning. First and foremost, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to Brad and Brittany Edwards, Congressman Massey and Kana, and above all, the brave survivors who have entrusted us with the privilege of speaking today on behalf of Virginia, Robert Jeffrey, as her family. We are here today because we support H.Res.581, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, in its entirety. But as much as this bill is about shining a light on truth, it's not just about the bill. This is about justice. This is about survivors. This is about justice against the rich and powerful who have stolen something from these women and many children at the time, their freedom. The freedom to live their life.
All right, I'm gonna come back at the end of the video and give my final thoughts, which will include the lady who's doing the interview, Hallie. I do not believe that they will give this woman a pardon. She's not going to get that. She didn't give them any information that was going to help in that case. And there is no open case right now. If you ask one side of our government, the crime never happened. So there's nothing for her to gain here. I guess the little bit of a perk that she got was getting to move facilities. In the grand scheme of what she actually wanted, she didn't really get that great of a deal in it. But I do understand why the survivors and their family members would be upset, because it is an example of how money and power influence the way our society works, the way our government works, and Ghislaine Maxwell is an example of that. And the victims are right. These people should be held accountable. It's like I said in my previous video, if any one of us were to do something like this, even much less of that, never see the light of day again, we would be behind a prison for the rest of our life. And in some states, you might even get the death penalty for that. But this woman was there, from what I've researched in this case, she was literally his number two in all of this. She doesn't deserve any kind of upgraded amenities or anything, but I do understand why the DOJ would have made that deal. They thought she was going to give them something, especially knowing that she was the number two, right? So I get it, and I mean, they could have just backed out of the deal since she didn't really give them anything, but they didn't even really give her anything that great. I guess they just moved her facility, but from my understanding, she was already staying at a super poshy facility. That's why one of the survivors was joking about her yoga and stuff. She's not in some like prison that is third world country level. No, she's probably living better than most people on Section 8 are living in that prison.
Without mental and physical scars that have been inflicted upon them by those who thought they were untouchable. The same freedom that these monsters took from these survivors, they should never be afforded. They should never be allowed to continue their lives with impunity. Let's be clear, this is not a political issue. This is not about left or right. This is about humanity. This is about doing what's right. And this is about ensuring that the future we leave behind is...
See, I don't like what this reporter is doing. I noticed it from the beginning, how she was wording certain questions, that she was trying to turn this into a political thing, into an anti-Trump thing. And I get it, this is NBC. But like this one woman said, this is a non-bipartisan issue. This is not left or right. This is not red or blue. This is not liberal conservative. This is not Democrat Republican. This is an everybody issue. The level that these crimes were committed, how it infiltrated almost every industry that runs our modern day society, is terrifying. And the fact that our government took it so lightly and technically only 2 people went to prison for this is absolutely absurd. We as the people, no matter what side of the political aisle that we're on, should be demanding this. I don't like to say this about my boy Trump, but he did this to himself. He ran on opening up these Epstein files for the full discrepancy of it, right? And when they did and gave us the same trash that they got the last time, people were holding him accountable, the same accountability that he was running on for these women. He didn't just like turn on it. I mean, he turned all the way on it to say it's a hoax, and breaks my heart every time he says that, because what these women went through, and so many more out there that are unspoken and unheard of stories, to degrade it to that level, I don't agree with that, and I can't stand by that.
militant one where the powerful can hide behind their wealth, their influence, and their money to evade justice. Our plea to you, whether you're a dad, a mom, a brother, or a sister, look your young ones in the face, look them in the eye, and tell them you didn't stand against the very people who raped, molested, and preyed upon children and young women. Tell them you were willing to negotiate a deal. Money should never be what makes something right or wrong. If you vote no, your stance will be clear. You will be choosing to stand on the side of the rich and powerful, allowing money to buy your way out of the consequence. But here's my one ask. Look these survivors in the eye and tell them why. Then, look the people of the United States in the eye and tell them why. And then, when you're alone, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself why. Virginia said it best, and I quote, "I have physical and mental scars that will never heal. I have memories that will never go away. They say time can heal, but this won't. Not until the justice system makes an example out of these people with so-called privileges. I just call it money. The only time I can begin to heal is when their freedom is taken from them, just like they did to me and literally thousands of other victims. The survivors of this horrific abuse are watching. The American people are watching. And history is watching. Which side will you be on?" Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenna-Lisa Jones, and I was only 14 years old when my friend brought me over to Jeffrey Epstein's house in Palm Beach in 2003. I had a terrible home life, but I was such an innocent kid then. I always did my best in school, and I had such a positive outlook on life. Until that day that I met Jeffrey, I have never been more scared in my life than I was that first time that he hurt me. I remember crying the entire way home, thinking about how I couldn't ever tell anyone about what actually happened in that house. This guy was so rich and had so many pictures with so many famous people, and no one would have ever believed me if I told them. I want to thank Congressman Rowe and Congressman Thomas Massey for having me here today. It was really hard for me to find my voice and to become strong enough to speak about my abuse. I didn't come forward until 2019, and even then it was like I was afraid of a ghost. I know that I was just a little kid, but sometimes I still feel like it is my fault that this happened. Being given the opportunity to speak at the United States Capitol building about something that is so important, not just to me and the women before you, but to the entire country. Together, we can finally make a change. And that is thanks to the people like these two congressmen and their teams who actually care about the victims. If you are a member of Congress and you are listening to all of us speak here today, please really listen to us. Please vote for this bill to be passed. Please recognize how important it is for transparency relating to Jeffrey Epstein. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, this does not matter. This is not about sides. You are an American, and you are a person who has chosen to serve in an elected position to stand up for those you represent who cannot always stand up for themselves. We are those people. We are the Americans that you promised to protect. And we need your help. Please, President Trump, pass this bill and help us. Make us feel like our voices are finally being heard. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Hallie Robson. I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine alongside with a 20-year-old male if I wanted to give an old rich guy a massage. But what high school girl would not want to do that? That day changed my life forever. And when I got into the massage room, Jeffrey Epstein undressed and asked me to do things to him. My eyes welled up with tears, and I have never been more scared in my life. When it was over, he paid me $200 and requested in exchange that I bring a girl each time to make another $200. I told him I did not want to do that, and then he gave me an ultimatum. Either you come here and massage me when I call you, or you bring me friends of yours to massage, and I will give you $200 per girl for each time she comes. I felt and hoped to never hear from him again, but he called me every day. He was so wealthy and powerful, and he would not let me go. I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen. So knowing I did not want to be sexually abused, I started to bring him other girls from my high school, and he paid me $200 for bringing them. I just hoped each time it would be the last time. One day, the stepmom of one of the girls brought him and called the police on Jeffrey Epstein. The police then called me in for questioning. I had told them the truth despite the fact that I was a teenager and a minor, and I was able to tell the police the names of all the other victims. The police treated me like a criminal. I had, by this time, had turned 18. I had been with Jeffrey since I was 16 and for 2 years. So they had told me So they told me I was going to be arrested. My name was then distributed to the press as a co-conspirator of my abuser, who I detested. My entire world was crashing in around me, and I started being threatened and bullied, till this day still receiving death.
Oh my God, that was incredibly powerful when she was talking about how terrifying it would be to come forward and give the names, because knowing that not only will that person not be held accountable for it, but you could potentially be putting your life and your family's life in danger by naming those names. It's like, that's exactly what's wrong here. These women should have never gone through this. They're right, this case should have been taken care of the first time. It wasn't. He was given a sweetheart deal, and he was allowed another decade or two to continue on with his nefarious activities. And it is sad that these women have to constantly relive their trauma and live it in public, knowing that there's a good portion of our society that is going to talk nasty to them, defame them, harass them, maybe even send death threats. And that's just coming from the internet, from the public. The real danger comes from their actual abusers. And that's a huge problem. The fact that these abusers have that much power and influence and can get away with committing these type of crimes is unacceptable. And these people, everyone that was involved, even those who were complicit, they should all be held accountable. But the problem is, it's so many people. If you think about the number of girls, multiply that by, 2, 3, 4 times, that's dangerous. It's a lot of people.
Threats. I was singled out and for many years had to suffer a smear campaign of lies about me because of the way that I was portrayed by the press. The press made me out to be a predator when I was just a 16-year-old little girl who was sexually abused by a powerful man and an evil man. For years, I had no friends. My boyfriend was murdered, and there was nowhere to turn. The government, after investigating more, learned that I was true a victim.
All right, so I want to give my final thoughts here. I really don't like the way she did this interview. First off, what is this? Kindergarten? Raise your hand for this, raise your hand for that. Lady, we all know that they're here because they're the survivors of Epstein and the family members. We don't need to raise our hands for that. That was just so undermining to them. Like, what are they, children? And then it was the type of questions that she was asking. I could see where she was leading to turn this into a political talking point. After these women have said that this is not a political thing, she had to turn it into a political thing. Like, that's NBC for you. You can't just interview these women, right? You can't ask them to share their stories, tell us what they've done with their activism, right? What are the things that they want? She did ask some of those questions, like about the DOJ and stuff like that, but she was just pressing so hard to make it a political thing. And that's absolutely disgusting. She should be ashamed of herself. NBC should be ashamed of themselves for allowing her to push it and make it a political point. Because the fact of the matter is, both sides of the aisle had been in power at different times while this was going on, and no one did anything about it. It hits a little bit harder now because President Trump did use this as a talking point for transparency, right? Like, he talked about releasing the JFK files, he talked about releasing the Epstein files. And so to then flop it and say this is a Hillary Clinton Democrat hoax, yeah, it's gonna cause some problems. And you know what? As his constituents, we have to call him out on that, regardless if you voted for him or not. The fact that he stood on that and stood with these women and now is just turning it around, it's not right. And it makes me suspicious because Kash Patel did the same thing. He went around all sorts of podcasts talking about that, the Epstein files, and how Epstein endgamed himself or didn't endgame himself, right? And all this stuff. And then he gets into a position of power where he could do something about this, and then he just throws out the same garbage that everybody, including him, complained about. And now it's oh no, there's nothing. It's very suspicious. It's very suspicious. I don't like that. For me, in some type of way, maybe doesn't confirm the conspiracies, but maybe gives it some legitimacy that this was something that was infiltrated through all parts of our society, including the government, because of the people that were involved are in all facets of what makes our modern society go. So if those people are put on blast for what they did, it's gonna shake up the whole thing. But I say, let's shake up the whole thing, because they don't deserve to be in the power that they're in. They're abusing us in a number of ways, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically. So this is a greater problem in our society, and these women are a part of the broken pieces that I don't think need to be fixed back together. I think we need to just start the whole thing over, but that's a topic for another day. Alright, that's going to wrap up today's reaction. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and drop a comment below with your thoughts. What do you think of the video? Do you agree with my reactions, or did you see something I missed? I'd love to know, so comment below. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell to get notifications so you don't miss any of our reactions. Thanks, guys.